Here's what I do know. A.J. Brown was on the radio station on Friday, and it was a fascinating interview. It really was on a lot of different levels. And look, we want to get into it today. It's really obviously our first chance as a show to discuss this interview and to do it with you at 215-592-9494 to obviously ascertain from you what stood out to you with the interview, what AJ said, what he didn't say, what you make of the whole thing. And again, there's so many elements of it to react to. We're going to play a lot of audio from the interview throughout the course of today's show. I mean, a lot of audio. It was, a fairly long interview, covered a lot of ground. Provided some answers, did not provide all answers. So we'll get into it here today at 215-592-9494 to assess what we heard and what it means and where the Eagles go with it from here and where we as a fan base go with A.J. Brown and where A.J. Brown goes with us. Because, clearly one of the main things that stood out was he feels misunderstood by the media. He feels misunderstood by fans. He doesn't like the presentation by certain media members, some media members. He didn't, specify a percentage or something, but obviously he was frustrated. And I give him all the credit in the world for calling in and wanting to address things. So again, your thoughts off the top at 215-592-9494. The main takeaway I have is great respect for A.J. Brown. Great respect. I've never met him, but I've heard from a number of people that he is a great dude. And I thought the way he presented himself on Friday, he comes off as likable and admirable. And he sounds like a great teammate. So, that was the main thing that stood out to me. The fact that he, the way he presents himself, it just strikes me like he's a good dude with good intentions. And as an Eagles fan, I certainly appreciate that. The second takeaway that I had is I think it's a shame that he feels so misunderstood. Look, some of it's inevitable. I mean, the reality is we're not behind the curtain. We being me and John, James, Rhea, but also, everyone listening right now, we're not behind the curtain at the NovaCare complex. So naturally, we can't know all. It's an impossibility. I'm sure every public figure to some extent is misunderstood to some extent, whether it's a little bit or a lot of bit. I mean, it's an impossibility to know every detail of everyone who's a public figure. So sure, there's going to be some misunderstanding. It's inevitable. But I will say this, some of it's also his fault. I mean, that's just the bare fact. I mean, he chose to stop talking, and what I think he really misidentified when he did not talk down the stretch of the season was by not talking how much that decision by him, admirable in its purpose, he addressed why he didn't. He thought it actually would help the team if he didn't talk. I think it hurt the team that he didn't talk because it led to rampant speculation we're all wondering, well, why ain't he talking? Why is he in such a bad mood about what's going on? Who's he mad at? Is it teammates? Is it the quarterback? Is it the coaches? Like, what is he so mad about? So I think there was some, I think it was a little bit naive, frankly, that decision set in motion a certain degree of misunderstanding that, to a certain extent was his fault. The final thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to John. I want to hear from everyone at 215-592-9494. And again, we're going to play a lot of audio coming up shortly here, is that I thought what he said about Jalen Hurts and what he did not say about Jalen Hurts actually spoke volumes. This was an interview where he's like, look, I'm here to, answer it all. Let's go. And then the first time he was asked about Jalen Hurts, he clearly, as he stated, didn't want to get into it publicly. So it's like, well, I mean, I don't know how to interpret that any way other than there's something there between AJ and Jalen, and he chose not to address it. And that will lead to, and this is going to be unfortunate for AJ because it clearly bothers him, that will lead to, you ready for this? Additional speculation. Oh, ain't it ironic? I mean, you can't say, like, let's go, let's do it all. And then when you get asked, and he had other answers about Jalen, a little bit more comprehensive on his personality. But the first time, and again, we'll play the audio shortly, the first time he had a chance to really address the Jalen thing, he totally ducked it. I mean, I want to say totally ducked it. He mostly ducked it. I'll put it that way. So we want to hear from you at 215-592-9494. Mad respect to A.J. Brown. The dude is a man. The dude is a great football player. He's one of the great players we've seen around here in a long time. I thought for the most part he did a wonderful job the way he presented himself and the situation. But there is a certain degree of still some confusion for me about some stuff. And we want to hear from you. John, what did you make?
Sure. I think there's a lot of confusion about a lot of stuff because there's a lot of gray area in today's world about what's media and what's social and, what's acceptable in that whole realm of crossing over between all that. But yeah, incredible pride that this is one of our players on our team. This is a brave move, a guy stepping up. He wants us to know that he's the leader of this team. Like, hey, I want you to see that I'm stepping up. I want to be the voice. We now know, like we've heard the stories. He gathered the team. He got them together. They were doing things together. That's huge. He's the guy who does that, and Jalen's sort of the lead by example guy. They have a system. This is a team led by Jalen Hurts, but also by Jalen Brown. This A.J. Brown. This is a big.
Well, I actually think it's led by A.J. Brown. I'll tell you this. I don't think the team is led by. Based on what I heard, I think it's an A.J. Brown led team. And maybe with Kelsey, maybe with Cox. I don't think
there's
Hurts
a delicate balance of it's led by a lot of guys. Like you got 53 guys on the roster. You got guys who matter, who are leaders. Anyone who's good matters a lot. Their opinion matters a ton. I thought it was interesting. AJ talked about, you see what the media is doing now this past whole month, and then he described the media creating stories that sort of, quote, become fact. That's what he did not, that's what he was opposed to. I'm opposed to that idea too. That would be incredibly frustrating if it were me, if it were my family, my loved ones who were affected because a story just cropped up and it suddenly became true because it appeared somewhere.
And you can't refute everything.
Right.
And so you pick and choose if you choose to refute anything, because if you get into that business of like, let me refute this one, and this one, but then you don't refute 7 other ones, then people think, well, okay, well then those ones are true and you don't want to
You'll just never win.
It's a slippery slope.
So, I am sorry that has clearly affected him and his, those that matter to him, and that stinks. He wants us to know no one works harder than he does. I thought it was awesome. He doesn't want to be referred to as a diva. He's a wide receiver who's aware that diva can be attached to wide receiver and the greats and all that. He does not want to be considered, in that sentence, and that's good too. There's a lot that means something.
Well, here's what's even better than that from a label standpoint.
He stands up to the bully. He's not a diva. Yeah. Like, this is the kind of guy who's a leader. This is the kind of guy who you should feel proud is leading your team, along with Jalen Hurts, along with Jason Kelsey. Like, we're talking about this is a team led by a group. They always talk about collaborative effort.
Yep.
It truly is that. But this media / social media
/ fans
/ whom, that does get dicey.
Well, and also he never specified, nor did he have to, but it did lead to additional sort of like he didn't specify national media as opposed to local media, and so I think part of his point, is he's annoyed at WIP hosts, I think, and perhaps just fans, but let's just say hosts from a media standpoint locally, for discussing stories that are presented by national media members. So like when the Craig Carton thing happens, maybe Jalen Hurts maybe A.J. Brown thinks that it is out of bounds for us here at WIP to hear what Craig Carton said and then say, hey, 215-592-9494, you just heard what Craig Carton said. Let's discuss it. What do you make of it? Here's what I make of it. John, what do you make of it? James, what do you make of it? Like, I think part of his point is he thinks speculation has gone too far. I think that's part of his point. Let's listen to one thing, and again, we'll play throughout the show, tons of audio. Here's a point in the interview, and it was pretty early on, when he actually started asking questions to Jack and Ike. It was fascinating. Here's an exchange from fairly early on in the interview.
I got a couple questions for you guys, though.
For sure.
What's the deal? What's the deal? Like, you guys supposed to be supporting Philly, but it don't turn out to be that. You know what I'm saying? Like, why make up so many rumors? You know what I'm saying? Like, because most of the rumors don't even be real rumors. These are rumors that you guys are making up and everybody run with. Like, so what's the deal? Like,
Well, for us particular, I don't think either one of us have made up any type of rumors about you or anybody else on the team. I know I may have met you once in passing or twice, so you may not even remember me. I know I'm a former player with the Eagles, and that's one thing I don't do is make up anything about any player or anything that's going on. Now, we may react to things that are being reported and come up with our own opinion about things and then form questions that we feel is worthy of being discussed with our audience.
I thought it was well handled by Ike in that moment there. I mean, AJ asked a question, Ike gave an answer. I mean, it's exactly what we do. And by the way, by we, sure, media, but I don't think most listeners, fans, are that different. You hear something on a national level or local level, report it. You think about it, whether it's here on WIP or with your friend at the water cooler, it's like, hey, what'd you make of that? What'd you make of what Jalen said? What'd you make of what Nick said? Hey, Howie Roseman did a press conference. He said this. What'd you make of it? Or Howie Roseman was supposed to do a press conference and didn't. What do you make of that? A.J. Brown was supposed to talk to the media after the game and didn't. What do you make of that? All right, so look, we'll take your calls on all this stuff. There's so many parts to it. And again, we will detail as we move through the show. A lot of audio that basically supports, the main storylines from that interview. All of it on the table, including your phone calls, 215-592-9494, which obviously includes the role of the media here in Philadelphia, WIP itself, our show. Let's do it. 215-592-9494. What do you make of it? Joe DeCamera and Jen Ritchie on 94 WIP.